I presented in state agency committee last thing Thursday, right before we left, SB 188, which covers polling places and electioneering. It's a little bill that doesn't do much, as we say so often, but it's an extremely important bill, and it's mainly simply says that on election day or election days, if it's an early voting place, that a polling place will be a polling place and not private property, because we're running into more and more problems where polling places are not allowing people to put up signs, not allowing people to electioneer. And by the term electioneer, we mean to hold signs, to ask people to vote for their candidate or for their proposition or against someone else's, and to gather signatures for petitions. And grassroots politics is what this nation is based on, and that the average citizen can get involved and make a difference. And if you can't gather signatures on an election day at a precinct, I mean, obviously being outside the 100-foot, and our law spells out that you can't electioneer with folks that are in line to vote, because it lines up completely with federal law. But what's happening now is we don't have uniformity, because some places allow signs, some places don't. But if somebody doesn't like a petition, and I don't like most of them, to be quite honest, but if somebody doesn't like a petition, they say, well, y'all can't gather signatures here. Well, that's the same as somebody saying, well, we're going to let Kim Hammer's opponent put up his signs, but not Kim Hammer. And which is exactly what someone can do if we're going to use the fact that it's private property. So this just says, if you're going to be a polling place on election day, it shall not be private property. You'll allow election type activities to go on.
Electioneering, tell people what that is, just so everybody has a good understanding of what that is.
Electioneering, again, is holding signs, waving signs, putting up signs, asking people to vote for your candidate, and also gathering signatures for petitions.
I know one of the things that has been a concern to some is that people are setting up within the 100-foot rule to, maybe give out bottled water, but they are actually affiliated with entities that may go for or against your grain, depending on what it is, but they are not actually they are not actually campaigning for a particular candidate per se, but what they represent and who they are as an organization may not align with some people's philosophies when it comes to who they want holding offices. Does this address that issue, or would that prohibit them from being within the 100-foot rule?
This does not address it, other than to address the 100-foot rule once again, which is already in law, because that being anything, if you're doing anything to do with electioneering within 100 foot, and certainly that would include handing out water, if you are taking a side, our election officials should already be handling that. That should be strictly against the law. It is strictly against the law. Actually, they should be controlling it and not allowing it to happen. But no, this bill does not address it, because already within 100 foot, you're not supposed to be doing anything like that. Although it does spell it out again in our bill. It's just because we're spelling out what's already in the law.
And for the benefit of those who may not know, the 100-foot rule is actually, as Alan mentioned, Senator Clark mentioned, is in the law, and it's intended to create a safe buffer so that when you walk up to the polling site, the polling center, or wherever it may be that you're going to vote, that you don't have to worry about being harassed or people getting in your space, sort of say. It's just a safety zone, and you'll notice in a lot of places, the Election Commission will go out and they will either do a chalk line or draw a paint line or something, and everybody is expected to stay outside of that 100 foot. Some people have figured out also, is that 100 foot of the primary entrance into the polling site, or is that 100 foot within the building? Those are some discussions we're having to bring some clearer definition to what that is, because the last thing we want to have is people feeling intimidated when they go to vote by either party or by any entity that's in there or there to try to persuade you or sway you through the use of pressure. Anything
Well,
else?
if it's not,
Go ahead.
if it's not already clear, my bill does spell out that it's within 100 foot of the primary exterior entrance used by voters to a building. So if it's not already clear in the law, this will make it clear in the law that within 100 foot, you don't do anything of the entrance to the building. You don't do anything.
Right. And one thing, constituents need to realize is that we make a law, and some people will actually use that law to their advantage, and we are always in the position of having to come back in order to maintain the integrity of what's intended in the election process. There are several bills that have already dropped that are in the pipeline dealing with some election issues. I know there's some others that are coming that are going to try to make sure that we don't turn out to be a Georgia state or another part of the country that, had some issues. We're going to try to learn from the mistakes of others to safeguard our election process here in the state. Anything else on that bill you want to talk about, Al?
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay. Hey, there was one other question I wanted to ask you. So what about churches that are going to be polling sites? How does this affect them with the separation of church and state? And if a church opens itself up to be an election center, how is this bill going to have bearing on them?
If you're a church on election day, you will be a polling place, not private property. And so if there's issues, as with any other property owner, if there's issues that you don't want people putting up signs or not putting up signs, don't be a polling place. Because we've got, both are extremely important. Religious freedom is very important, but as we learned in this last election, voting is sacred, and we've got to allow people to do the things that people do on election day. And especially, what I didn't mention is if establishment candidates, people who have lots of money, even those of us that are incumbents like yourself and myself, have an advantage. Grassroots candidates who I was when I first ran, and people gathering signatures, etc. If they can't have people waving signs and gathering signatures, etc., then you leave everything to the people with money. And so this is extremely important to the very fabric of what we believe about that all of us can affect elections in this country.
And, at the end of the day, if you've got the better proposal and you've got the what's best for the security of the nation and, leads us where we should want to be going as a nation, rally the troops and do a better job at marketing and getting it done. And this is what provides you the opportunity to make sure you got that.